So what I want to do is there's a neat book. It's the book. I'm not going to give you the title because that will give away my Dvar Torah. But this book is 101 Misconceptions about Judaism. So I'm not going to, go through all 101 of them, but there's a few of them that are fun. So we'll do that over the next few Divrei Torah. So the title of the book, that's the one I want to talk about. Let me just get my chumash. So the question is, what fruit did Adam and Eve eat? So what's the...
No one knows.
What? You said apple? What fruit have you heard? An apple, right?
No one knows. There's an opinion that says the etrog.
Okay.
But no one knows for sure.
What do you got over there? Are you scratching your head? Or are you raising? Okay. It's that hard of a question, huh? Okay. So what's this part called? At least amen. An Adam's apple, right? So that's based on the idea that Adam and the apple. So there's an idea that Adam and Eve ate an apple. So let's see if it's true or not. If they ate an apple or not. So if you would like to join me, open up to page 13 in your Chumash. We'll just read the verses and see if it talks about an apple. You're welcome to join me. Page 13, verse 15. So the verse says like this. Hashem, God, took man and placed him in the Garden of Eden to work it and guard it. And Hashem, God, commanded the man, saying, of every tree of the garden you may freely eat. So far it doesn't say any types. It says all the trees you can eat. But it says, but of the tree of knowledge of good and bad you must not eat thereof, for when the day you eat of it you shall surely die. So far, all we have is don't eat of the tree of knowledge of good and bad. It doesn't say anything about what the fruit is. Let's move forward to chapter 3. That's on the next page. Verse 1. It's in the middle of page 15, verse 1. It says, now the serpent was cunning beyond any beast of the field that Hashem, God, had made. He said to the woman, did perhaps God say you should not eat of any tree of the garden? The woman said to the serpent, of the fruit of any tree of the garden we may eat. Of the fruit of the tree which is in the center of the garden, God has said, you shall neither eat of it nor touch it. So it just says the fruit in the middle of the garden. It doesn't say what type of fruit. Let's keep going. The serpent said to the woman, you will not surely die, for God knows that on the day you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and bad. It still doesn't say what type of fruit. Verse 6, and the woman perceived that the tree was good for eating, and that it was a delight to the eyes, and that the tree was desirable as a means to wisdom. And she took of its fruit and ate, and she gave to her husband with her, and he ate. Immediately after, they realized that they were naked, and they sewed together a fig leaf and made themselves aprons, it says. So it doesn't say what fruit they took. And it's interesting to wonder, how did we get to this idea that it's an apple? So I want to offer you a few. So simple reading of the text, we don't know what it is. Now, the sages offered a few different options. And they offered some of the reasoning behind why they offered them. And then we'll get back to but none of them are apples. Okay? Now we'll get back to why, how do we get to an apple? Because there's a reason behind it. So one of the reasons they offered, one of the answers they said it was, one of the sages says it was wheat. All right? So how does that look? So a wheat tree. It was apparently, so in that time they understood wheat to give wisdom. It says a child, when he's younger, from the moment he eats wheat, then he's able to talk and to think. So they connected wheat to wisdom. So I think that's the connection between this. The Talmud says it. That's the connection between this and the tree. Because wheat gives wisdom, so they said, well, if it's a tree of knowledge, it has to be wheat. So they try to understand what exactly that means. There's explanations to that. We won't get into that. Okay. Another option was that it's figs. Why do you think that they offered that one?
Because that's the next fruit that is named in the...
Exactly. It says they were in the tree. They were in the Garden of Eden. They ate from the fruit. Oh, we sinned, God. Oh my gosh, we're not clothed. Let's go find something to cover ourselves with. They found fig leaves. So apparently, that's a simple reading. You can say that maybe that's the explanation, that's what there was right next to them. So maybe that was the tree, the tree of good knowledge of good and bad. So that's one. That's a good one, I think. Two other explanations are like grapes and an etrog. So grapes, the Gemara says grapes because they can bring horrible things to the world, like with Noah, when Noah got drunk and all kinds of bad things happen. And so if you're looking for a tree that's going to bring bad to the world, maybe it'll be grapes, because a lot of bad things happen, people get intoxicated. Maybe some of you have something to say about that, but that's for another time. Etrog. So why is it etrog? So etrog, it says in Masechet Sukkot, there are explanations to this, but one of them is that it's a beautiful tree. It says Priyat Hadar. And if it's going to be a tree that's going to attract her eyes, it must be a beautiful tree. And so that must be an etrog. So those are the 4 different explanations provided by the sages, but none of them are an apple. So how do we get to the apple? Misconception. So when this is what I saw on different places, and I heard this in a lecture once. When they printed the Bible in Latin in the 4th century, the word for evil is malum. Okay, I hope I'm pronouncing. Anybody? Okay, good. I don't think anybody here knows Latin. So now the word for apple is malum in Latin. So they arrived from the idea that the good and evil is same. They have the same word, evil and apple. And when people read it, they just kind of asserted that it must be that the tree was from an apple. That's kind of like where a lot of that came from. Now, and so now in art, like earlier Christian art, they actually used to paint it as a fig. Like Michelangelo's painting in the Sistine Chapel was a fig tree. So, but later on, like in the 12th century, I read it started to catch on. It was an apple, and just it took off from there. That's kind of like the history of that. I just want to kind of mention one more point. Another way to go with what are these sages? Why are they offering all these examples? I think in a deeper level, and this is kind of based on what he wrote in this book. This book is called Chava Lo Achla Tapuach. What does that mean?
Chava didn't eat an apple.
Yeah, the whole book is called Eve didn't eat an apple. And there are 100 other things in here, but that's the one he named it. That's what he named it after. So, so he kind of mentions this, and I would say these 4 different things could be 4 different big obstacles to our spiritual growth. So if you think about it, wheat could stand for financial gain and money, and so that's a big obstacle to growth. So maybe that's why they highlighted that as the tree that brought all the sin into the world. Another one is the figs, and if the fig tree would help them cover themselves up, maybe that alludes to illicit sexual acts. That's also a big obstacle. And you have the etrog, which is beauty. Beauty can really draw somebody to bad places and take them completely away from where they wanted to be. Aesthetics and draw them being drawn after their eyes. And lastly is wine or grapes, which could be gluttony and addiction. So these are really big things, and you see that even the people who have seem like they have everything. Some of these things can really pull them down. I think maybe that's the message of the tree and kind of what the sages are trying to say. So that could be a message for us. We'll go